Right now, there is enough ice sitting on top of Antarctica to raise every ocean on Earth by nearly 60 meters. Tonight, imagine it all melts, not over centuries, overnight. What happens to the coastline near you before the sun comes up again? Most people picture this as a slow flood, water creeping up a beach a few inches at a time. That image is comforting, and it's also completely wrong. The real version doesn't creep, it arrives like a hammer. Let's start with the number itself, because it barely sounds real when you first hear it. Antarctica holds about 26.5 million cubic kilometers of ice, glaciologist Eric Rignot, who has spent decades tracking ice sheet mass using satellite data, has shown that this single continent contains roughly 90% of all the freshwater ice on the planet. Not most of it, 90%. If you've ever looked at a globe and thought the ice caps were just decoration at the bottom of the map, they're not decoration. They're a reservoir holding back the ocean. So picture the switch flipping. Every glacier, every ice shelf, every frozen mile of that continent turns to liquid in a single night. The first thing to understand is that this isn't ice cube physics. An ice cube melting in a glass doesn't raise the water level because it's already floating and displacing its own weight. But most of Antarctica's ice isn't floating. It's sitting on land on rock above sea level, in some places over 4 kilometers thick. When land ice melts, that water has nowhere to go but into the ocean. Every drop is new water added to a system that was never built to hold it. How much new water are we talking about? Enough to raise global sea level by an estimated 58 meters according to modeling published by the British Antarctic Survey. That's not a typo, 58 meters. Picture a wave the height of a 20-story building, except it isn't a wave. It's the new, permanent shape of the ocean. Does that sound impossible? It should, because nothing close to this has ever happened in a single night in the planet's entire history. But smaller versions of this exact process have happened before, and the evidence is written into the rock. About 14,600 years ago, at the end of the last ice age, something called meltwater pulse 1A occurred. Oceanographer Richard Fairbanks, studying ancient coral reefs off Barbados in the early 1990s, discovered a layer of dead coral that could only have formed if sea level rose an astonishing 16 to 25 feet in less than 500 years. Coral can't survive being drowned that fast. It leaves a scar in the rock record, a dead zone marking the exact moment the ocean rose faster than life could adapt. Fairbanks' research showed the whole planet drowning coastlines in what was, geologically speaking, the blink of an eye. Now take that event and compress it from centuries into a single night. In the first minutes, nothing looks different. The ice is gone, but water takes time to move, even catastrophically. Then the coastal retreat begins, except retreat is the wrong word, it's an advance. Rivers reverse, estuaries fill and overflow within minutes. Any city built at sea level, and there are hundreds of them, starts taking on water before most people even wake up. Within the first hour, cities like Miami, Shanghai, Mumbai, and Amsterdam are already unrecognizable. These aren't obscure towns. Climate researchers tracking coastal population density estimate that roughly 600 million people currently live in areas less than 10 meters above sea level. 600 million. Almost none of that land survives a 58-meter rise. Have you ever tried to picture 600 million people all displaced at once? No refugee crisis in human history comes close. But the flooding isn't even the strangest part. The strangest part is what happens to the ocean itself. Antarctica's ice isn't just frozen water. It's frozen freshwater, and dumping that much freshwater into salty ocean water all at once would disrupt something scientists call thermohaline circulation, the same deep ocean current system that moves heat around the planet. Oceanographer Wallace Broecker, who spent his career studying abrupt climate shifts, warned that even modest freshwater pulses in the North Atlantic have historically been enough to stall or reroute these currents. A pulse this size wouldn't just stall the system. It could shut major currents down entirely, at least for a period, throwing regional climates into chaos that has nothing to do with the flooding happening at the coastlines. So while the coasts drown, the interior of continents could face the opposite problem: sudden, severe cooling in places that depended on those currents for their climate stability. Ironic, isn't it? A planet melting and freezing in different places in the same week. There's another consequence almost nobody thinks about: pressure. Antarctica's ice sheet weighs an almost incomprehensible amount, and that weight presses down on the continent's bedrock, pushing it slightly into the Earth's mantle. Geophysicists studying a process called glacial isostatic adjustment have found that when ice this massive disappears, the land underneath doesn't just sit there. It rebounds, slowly rising as the pressure releases, sometimes by tens of meters over time. Do that instantly on a continental scale, and you're not just changing sea level. You're changing the shape of Earth's crust itself all at once on the one continent built to withstand at least. Let's lay the timeline out plainly, because it happens faster than most disaster scenarios you've ever imagined. Hour 1, coastal rivers reverse flow. Tidal flooding begins in every low-lying city simultaneously. Hour 6, major coastal metropolises are submerged past their ground floors. Emergency systems are already overwhelmed. Day 1, an estimated 600 million people are displaced. Freshwater floods the upper layers of the North Atlantic and Southern Ocean. Week 1, ocean currents begin destabilizing. Regional weather patterns shift unpredictably across multiple continents. Month 1, global shipping, agriculture, and trade routes tied to coastal infrastructure collapse almost entirely. Year 1, the map of human civilization looks nothing like the one you grew up memorizing. Does any of that sound exaggerated? It's built directly on documented glaciology, coral reef records, and ocean circulation science. The only thing invented here is the speed. Nature usually gives us centuries. This scenario gives us a night. Here's the part worth sitting with. You've probably never thought of Antarctica as something holding your world together. It's distant, white, empty, a place mentioned in documentaries and forgotten 5 minutes later. But that ice isn't just scenery at the bottom of the map. It's a boundary line quietly separating the ocean you know from the ocean that would exist without it. Every coastline you've ever visited, every port city, every beach town, exists in its current form because that ice has stayed roughly where it is for thousands of years. Glaciologist Eric Rignot's satellite research has already documented Antarctica losing ice mass at an accelerating rate, not overnight but steadily year after year. The scenario in this video is extreme. The underlying mechanism is not fictional at all. Paleoclimatologist Richard Alley, who has spent decades studying ice cores drilled directly out of Antarctica and Greenland, has pointed out that Earth's climate system doesn't always change gradually. Ice core records show it has flipped between stable states abruptly before, sometimes within a human lifetime. The planet has a history of moving faster than the models built to describe it. So no, this isn't really a story about ice at the bottom of the world. That was never the real subject. The real subject is what that ice is quietly doing for you right now, holding back an ocean that wants, geologically speaking, to be somewhere else entirely. You started this thinking about ice disappearing overnight, but ice was never really the story. The story was always about the fragile agreement holding the ocean exactly where it is, an agreement Antarctica has been keeping for longer than any city, any coastline, any civilization you've ever known. Right now, there is enough ice sitting on top of Antarctica to raise every ocean on Earth by nearly 60 meters. Maybe, for the first time, that number doesn't feel distant anymore.